Val, it feels like I'm walking on a stage naked, and there's nothing that I can do to hide. And there's no way that I can lead into that feeling because it is going to start in such a raw and vulnerable and heavy way. And I'm not comfortable with my nakedness. Dude, what is going on? First of all, I hope you're having the best day. I'm having a pretty good day myself. Not that you asked, but I hope you care. But you don't need to care. But you should if you're watching this video about my life, right? I don't know. Anyway, hello. I know the title of this video is a little out there, and we are going to talk about the title of this video, but it is more a metaphor than me literally talking about the feeling of being naked. But where does it come from? I've talked about writing on this channel a number of times, whether it's talking about the memoir that I'm working on now or the poetry that I used to write that I'm starting to write again. But I haven't ever really talked about why I would write. I'd always write for myself. It was a cathartic act. It was something that, whether I sat down with the express intent to write a poem or to edit a poem or to just get my words down on paper, translating thoughts and ambiguous feelings into something that I could transcribe and read back to myself and better understand, no matter which of those circumstances I have ever been writing in, one thread has always been shared between them all, and it's the fact that I have never really shared my work. I've never really shared my writing outside of a few people in my life in intimate moments where poems have come up or I've written something that I'm supremely proud of that I feel like I can share with somebody else. It's always just either lived in my head, my notes page on my phone, my journals, and never really been shared. But I'm changing that now. I frequent a lot of coffee shops. I love coffee, tremendously so. Now, one of my friends, well, at the time, acquaintances, at one of the coffee shops that I go to very regularly around here by me, started hosting these open mic nights, and they're basically just an opportunity to come on stage and share your music, whether it's an original piece that you've made or you're doing a cover. And he invited me a few times. He said, yeah, they're every other Thursday, like come check it out, it'd be great to have you support. And I was like, yeah, okay, but I knew Thursday nights, generally weekday nights, are kind of busy for me, so I never really made an effort. Except one night I was working there later than I normally do, and I stayed late enough that the show was going to be starting soon, and I said, you know what, why not just stay? Let me support my friend and let me see what this whole thing is about. And it was awesome. The performers were truly amazing. It was such a supportive group of people. But the aha that went off in my head was that when he had said it's an open mic night, I just assumed that only meant sharing songs. I assumed that meant you're a singer or you're a songwriter, you're a guitarist, or you're some combination of the three, and it's just for music. And I thought that until some girl went up on the stage and read a poem. And I said, oh, I didn't know. I said, turned to my friend Matt, I said, I didn't know you could share writing here. He goes, yeah, it's an open mic. You could share whatever you want. It's an open mic. That's literally what I'm like, okay, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know what that meant. Anyway, so I was like, okay, in 2 weeks, when you have the next one, I'm going to come share my writing. I just kind of felt like, whatever, I'll give this a shot. And I stayed true to my word. And 2 weeks later, I showed up. I shared 3 of my original poems, and they were really well received. And it felt really good to get up on that stage and try to just share my work with no expectations. I definitely shared poems that I was proud of. I didn't get on stage and think ooh, I don't really like this. I definitely tried to do a home run the first go to show that I deserved to be on that stage. But it was amazing. People complimented my writing and came up to me and said that was amazing. And then I said, I'm going to do this again. I'm just going to come back in 2 weeks and do it again. And that's exactly what I did. And 2 weeks ago, and I shared another 3 of my original poems. These I wasn't as proud of. I think the writing could have definitely been workshopped and reworked a little bit to be better. But after that second time, showing up there and realizing that it felt so good to be around a community of people, whether they're musicians or other poets that I met or other people who are writers, write songwriters or poetry or anything else of that sort of nature. I realized that I have really just lived in a silo with my work in this sense. I don't share it. It stays in my notes page. It stays in my journals. It lives in my brain. And it is such a fundamental aspect of who I am. Like, it really does run through the core of who I am as a human being. And I've never really had musically inclined friends. I've never had really close friends who are artists. And I realized that's a hole in my life. I never really felt like there was something missing there, but as soon as I got to surround myself with people who are musicians and artists in that way, I realized, like, wow, these are some super creative, really brave, courageous people. And no matter what kind of work they're into sharing, these are very fundamental value traits that I share with people who I want to get to know better. This is an amazing forum, not just to share my work, but to establish a brand new community that is so in line with the kind of person that I want to be and the kind of person that I'm trying to be, especially now so with the writing that I've been doing on a very frequent basis. And so I committed. I said, going forward, it's not like a hard rule, but I think every 2 weeks when he's got these open mic nights going, I'm going to keep just showing up and sharing my work. I'm going to just keep doing this. We'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. I feel like that was a pretty lengthy preamble, but I also feel like I didn't say anything that didn't need to be said. Now, all that being said, finally brings us to yesterday. And oh my God, what a trip yesterday's open mic was. I came in to yesterday's open mic again with the intention of sharing 3 original poems. And one of them, I knew exactly what I wanted to share because it's my best friend Cole's favorite poem that I've ever written. Another one that I wasn't sure on. And then over the course of this last week, I had some of the most intense, heavy, potent writing that has ever left my mouth and these hands leave me and enter the page. And I don't really know how it came out of me. I don't really know what spurred on this thing, but it just fell out of me with such an intensity. Like, during free moments at work, I was just finishing this poem, and every time I went on a walk and I was like, let me just listen to a podcast or listen to some music, I would just find myself falling back into trying to finish this poem because I couldn't rest until it was done. And it became a 3-page long, essentially spoken word poem, which I've never written before in my life. I've never written something that speaks like a spoken word. I'm very conscious of my rhythm and my meter and my tone and these other things that I think help play to my strengths very linguistically and performatively. When I get up on a stage, they just sound flowy and good, and I recognize that. I'll give myself that compliment. But this was powerful. This was really heavy. And honestly, if I knew where the internet was leading me, I would feel comfortable sharing it here, but I don't want to share it with anybody outside of that circle for right now. Maybe one day. Definitely one day. I think it's an immortal poem that I wrote. And I was so proud of myself for writing it that when it was finally complete, like when it finally felt complete to me, I was just so exuberant about the fact that it was done. And I was so proud that it sounded so good. I hadn't really processed all of the things that I wrote down. It was about abuse and like family stuff. That's all I'm going to say right now. And I read it to my friend and she was like, oh my God, like, Ariana, are you okay? Like, damn. And I was like, yeah, I'm great. It's just, I'm so excited that it sounds so good that I haven't even processed what I've written down. But yesterday I did. When it was finally finished, I finished it on Wednesday. And then I woke up yesterday morning And I kept practicing it because it just sounds so good and it is so raw and it is so beautiful. But it finally started to hit me what I wrote, and that all the things that I wrote in this poem were things that I experienced in my life that are so vulnerable and so real and raw and naked. And then it kind of hit me, oh wow, like you've really gone through some stuff, girl. You've really struggled through life, haven't you? And you're going to get on a stage and you're going to share all of this rawness, all of this pure vulnerability with a whole bunch of strangers and people who know you, but don't know you like that. Damn. And it wasn't enough for me to not want to do it. But I started to get anxious and nervous, and not performance anxiety, like how am I going to do, but just, it's always been easier for me to be vulnerable when I'm just being vulnerable with myself, when I'm writing and I'm giving myself an avenue for once in my life to freely express how I feel and to think about how I feel, which was so suppressed in my childhood. But it's such a different thing to be that vulnerable and free with other people. And that made me really nervous, and I kind of dissociated a little bit when I walked in, and I told my friend who was there, who's also performing, she's just so talented. It's like, I'm kind of nervous. And she asked me, she's like, well, why are you nervous? And I explained to her something that I didn't realize before I said it, and it's something that I'm realizing now. Everything that I've ever written, because I know where the story is going, I have the control, even in the most vulnerable moments of writing the most vulnerable things. I have the pen. I have the control of where that story goes. And a lot of my writing, I sort of lead into a story that ends with a punch. And I know what that punch is before the audience does, before the reader does, because I'm the one who's speaking it, who's reading it, who's walking it to that final point. But the poem that I shared yesterday, that I'm so proud of writing and really so proud of performing, started with such a naked truth that there's no walking away, there's no leading somebody into a story, there was no controlling the outcome. Somebody could have, within the first 10 seconds of me speaking, already had an intense emotional response to something that I had written that I could not control, that I could not dictate, that I could not stop, lead in, just control that feeling of this is my story and I'm going to lead you to it the way that I want you to. Left. It was totally a free moment of no control. And that was hard for me. And I told her what it felt like in my body. I said, it feels right now, it would be like if this room was full of people, which it was about to be, and I was naked, and I walked on this stage naked, and everybody can see everything about me before I even do anything. And within 5 minutes, sure, everyone's going to be a little bit more comfortable because they've seen everything that they're going to see, and all have realized that they're going to see everything that they would have already seen, and there's no surprises left, and that would have made me feel a little bit less anxious. But I said, Val, it feels like I'm walking on a stage naked, and there's nothing that I can do to hide. And there's no way that I can lead into that feeling because it is going to start in such a raw and vulnerable and heavy way. And I'm not comfortable with my nakedness. And that's probably not a good thing. That's definitely not a good thing. I do mean this literally, like the feeling of being naked with myself, with other people, is a really hard feeling for me to get comfortable in. And metaphorically, it hits me the same way. It's really hard for me to be emotionally naked, to be supremely raw, supremely vulnerable, to not be controlling, to not be articulating and intonating exactly what I want to say and being super calculating with what I say. It's really hard for me still. But I got on that stage and I did my first 2 poems and they worked out great. And I took a big breath and I said, this is going to be heavy and we're going to go on a journey together. And then I took another big breath because I still wasn't ready. And then I did it. I just went for it. I went for it. I let those first 10 seconds out. And my heart poured out of my vocal cords and into that microphone, and the room went pin drop silent. My voice was a little shaky at times because I was saying some real hard stuff, but it was so pure. It was such palpable. You could feel it. Vulnerability, rawness, emotion, right at the source of the vein. And I cannot even begin to describe to you the way that everybody applauded me. I knocked the socks off of everybody in that room, blew people just totally away. My friends who are baristas there had tears in their eyes and they came to give me a hug, and one of them was actually crying, and I was like, don't cry, it's okay. And my friend who performed was asking me are you okay? And people I don't know walked up to me and said, thank you so much for sharing that. I know it was not easy to get up on that stage and share, and what a beautiful story. And I'm just so in awe of your ability to get up on that stage. That takes some real bravery. And I had a mom come up to me at the very end, and this is my favorite part of anything of that night. So many people came up to me. The baristas hugged me, and my friends teared up and hugged me, and the owner of the coffee shop, who I'd never met before, came up to me and he said the most wonderful things. He said, my only regret is that I didn't record that, because if you said that again, it's not going to have the same shake in your voice and the same as the way that it will the first time that you've ever read that. He's like, that was incredible. People remembered me because of my words. What a feeling. Anyway, at the very end of the show and everything was kind of wrapping up, this mom came up to me and she introduced herself. She said, hi, my name's Nancy. And she just stopped talking mid-sentence. She was like, can I give you a hug? And she wrapped her arm around me and she gave me a big hug. And she goes, it just took, I know how much it must have taken for you to get up on that stage and say what you said. And I'm a mother, so I, in a way, can understand what you were trying to say. And just from a mom, I just want to let you know, thank you. And I'm so proud of you for sharing that. And then she trailed off again, and she just didn't know how to communicate what she was saying in a way other than physical affection. And she just stopped again, and she goes, I just need to give you another hug. And even though I was dissociated and I had all this adrenaline and stress dumping out of my body, that hit me. That made its way to my heart. And I said to her, I'm a little not here right now because there's a lot of emotions going on inside me, but I'm going to remember this. I'm going to remember that that's what you just said to me, because this really does mean a lot to me. Just to be seen by a mom. I didn't want to be creepy and say that to her, but I said some really heavy stuff about my mother wound, and it felt like a celebrity wanting to say hi to me. I'm a mom and I just want to hug you. I was like, that means so much to me that you're giving me that love right now. Anyway, I'm going to keep sharing my work. I think we all should share our work. And I don't know why I've never really thought to do this before, but I think, again, it's just like the domino effect of as I learn who I am more and I unlearn the things that I'm not or no longer want to act like I am, I become more of myself, and I'm more confident in myself and more rooted in myself, and thus more ready to take on bigger risks and challenges like doing open mic nights. And I think even though I don't really like to rhyme because I feel like it's a little cheap, like it's a little just too easy, I think I have a real talent for this spoken word thing. My anticipation of sharing my work was that I was going to feel like I was a naked girl walking up on a stage for everybody to see me, and I've never known or felt comfortable in my nakedness before. But when I finished that poem and I texted my friend Allie and she said, "How do you feel?" I said, like I was naked and for the first time proud of my nakedness. And I feel so nourished right now. I feel no urge to binge. I feel no urge to run. I'm not anxious. I feel so seen and so healed and so nourished. And that, my friends, is the power of love. It's a power that in this way, I've never felt in this intensity before, in this acuteness before, other than sharing my work, which I'm realizing now. So I'm going to keep doing that. And another girl that shares beautiful poems told me, she's like, I hope, like, I'm just so happy for you that you're getting the recognition that you deserve for your work, because it is incredible. And I hope that this is like all of the feedback that you needed, that you should continue to do this. And I know how the universe works, so I smiled. Because the universe will reward you for showing up and for trying new things. The universe rewards yeses that lead you farther down the path that you're meant to live and you're meant to walk. And so the beginner's luck of a thing like this, I don't think it's happenstance. I think it happens for a reason. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make there be a reason. I love you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to be naked here. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye. The poem was called Responsible, by the way. Just